Let's build a business based on H2H, not B2B, but human-to-human sales and marketing automation. A human approach is the only one that sells.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our show. My name is Bart, and I invite a guest for a short 20 minutes interview to inspire you and improve your sales and marketing the human way. So today, I'd like to welcome Michael Anderson, executive coach, leadership development, and keynote speaker. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Bart, it's a real pleasure to be here with you.
A little bit of background to everyone. I met Michael at one of our events in London, and we talked all about AI in the angle of leadership. Today's podcast is all about why most AI projects fail, and it's not the technology. Michael, I read your white paper, lots of data in there, lots of pages, but one as an introduction, really, I would like to dive into the very quick questions. Why only 5 to 6% of organizations at the enterprise level just start using and have any AI returns out of investment? Obviously, that was back from 2025. Things are maybe moving fast. Give us a bit of sense of why is that. Give us a bit of introduction.
Yeah, Bart, the AI is a mess right now, to be quite honest with you. And we read all these articles about AI. We read about all the cool stuff it's doing, get the cool demos, etc. But at the end of the day, when you look at the statistics, only 5% of generative AI pilots even hit the P&L in a positive way. So 95% of them have no financial gain. Only 27% of executives can record any gain on their projects at all, not even hitting the P&L. And basically, we are in the Wild West. The technology is so new. Everybody's trying to figure out what this is or what it means. It looks a bit different than some of the other projects we've implemented, but it's not, and I'll get to that in a second. And the big statistic is that when these projects are going in, 93% of the budget is going to AI tools and AI specific skills, and only 7% to people and processes. And, Bart, you're a CRM guy. I'm an ERP guy. We know that when you implement enterprise software that transforms business processes, you need to probably spend at least 50% to 2/3 of your energy on the people and the processes, and use the technology as a tool.
So this is very interesting, because we are all know what we are talking about. At enterprise level, we assume people want to invest and have that clarity of what they want, but actually then a little nice tool came over, maybe in 2021, am I right? ChatGPT, someone told me, hey, try this tool, and it's like, what is this? Now everyone is using it, checking all the data. Now suddenly AI governance is in place, and like people are thinking, maybe this is not for us. Maybe hold on a second, we'll see how it goes. Why do you think, from the psychological perspective, why do you think is that? Why people just trying tools without actually knowing where to go and what to use it for, and without any preparation? Is it our human nature?
Part of it's always our human nature, Bart. We know that, but yes, but it's here's the human nature. It's the FOMO. It's the fear of missing out. What I've had multiple CEOs come and say is they said, the board told me I have to implement AI right now. And then I asked the board what that means, and they have no answer. They just know that our competitors are doing it. They're reading articles about it. So I don't want to throw too many stats at you, but they say 64% of CEOs have implemented AI because of board pressure, not because of a business case, not because it makes sense, because they literally were being looked at by their board. And I'm sure that's not CEOs, it's sales managers, sales directors, VP of sales, etc. They don't want to, when their boss asks them, have you implemented AI? They don't want to say no, because that is going to potentially look bad for them in their careers, and they'll look like they're falling behind. And also, people think that AI is a fix. The thing is, AI is an accelerator. And what I mean by that is, if you have a dysfunctional team, or your team are siloed, the AI is going to accelerate that. It's going to make the dysfunction worse or the silos worse. If you have a healthy team, it's going to accelerate that. But it's not a Band-Aid, and it's not going to fix what's already broken.
So from your own perspective, maybe you can give us a bit of your story in short moment. Obviously, I read your LinkedIn, which is very much impressive. You've been in America, now you're living in the UK, you've been involved in many types of what we call ventures. I can see Owner Dynamics, NAV, 16 years. My goodness, give us a bit more insights, because in order to give AI context, I think we need to give a technology context. from, from 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, happy to do that, Bart. And, I started as a programmer and a project manager. And then at 35, I founded my first software company. And I went on to found 2 other software companies. I scaled all 3 of those and I sold all 3 of those. During that, I realized I wasn't a good leader. So I ended up learning a master's in psychology and a neuroscience certificate. And I spent 25 years in ERP implementations, a little bit of CRM like you, Bart, but mostly ERP, which is more like the accounting, the finance, the distribution, the manufacturing. So for 25 years, I implemented technology, business process technology systems where, so I know that really, really well. I went into leadership consulting. So I have 4 books. I've sold over 100,000 copies of Leadership Mindset 2.0, talking about the psychology of leadership. So when AI came around, I realized that as a former technologist, for lack of a better term, and somebody who understands enterprise software implementations and somebody who understands the psychology of leadership, that's why Bart's read my 14,000 word white paper that goes into way too much detail for most people, but about like where AI is at, where companies are struggling with it now and what companies need to do. And I just did a keynote. Yeah, I literally just got back from Boston yesterday where I did a keynote called Human Leadership in an AI World. And that's why I love your podcast, Bart. And that's what I think we could spend a couple minutes on, at least, really is talking about where the human needs to stay in this whole AI world.
And this is what we are seeing. And definitely we're going to link up all of the efforts in terms of the content, because your content is amazing. Highly recommend all of us who's listening just to look up what you are doing, because I think the perspective matters. Especially within an AI, there are lots of AI experts, AI people who then suddenly became that AI, but you came from your experience, process management, and you have your context that many of the consultants doesn't have. And I need to make it very clear and loud. The context matters and your content is fantastic. So coming back to the human nature, we talk about the leadership. So this is the kind of paradox of the situation, because everyone was thinking about, yes, we can use agentic word, isn't it? It will come soon. By the end of the year, we're going to have like massive change. And quite a lot of people really don't understand what are you talking about, the AI, agentic, and so on. And then yet again, we need to touch the soft part of business development, which is leadership, building relationships, ability to turn that conversation into a relationship. Tell me a little bit more of your context about how you can see big companies, enterprise companies moving that skill set into the leadership in 2026, 2027 and above.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, yesterday I was speaking at day 2 of a conference at a company that probably most people would know the name if I told you the company, and they came to me and they knew what my session was going to be about. My session was after lunch. So here I am, I'm at lunch an hour before my session, where people have been there for a day and a half. And I always like to talk to people before I present. And they said, hey, we're really excited about that because we've been hearing about AI, for years. We've been, hearing about AI for the last day and a half, of where specifically it's going to be. But it's your individual person. So whoever's listening to this is probably a little confused about what does it mean to them? What does it mean to them as a leader? What does it mean to them for your career? Because honestly, if you are a leader and you're not asking, how does AI affect my job? You're probably being a bit naive. You should be asking yourself that. And also your team is probably, they read all the articles, some of these articles like nobody's going to have a job in 2 years, which is false. We can talk more about that if you want. But the fact is, as leaders, we need to lead these initiatives. And it's so important because anytime there's fear, we need to step up as leaders and coaches and really understand, be honest with people about what's happening and not happening. We need to understand it ourselves, and we need to go into this without fear. Because if you as a leader are going into this with fear, your team is going to pick up on that. They think they're all going to get fired, and then then a lot of really bad things happen.
Very good take. Now, in terms of our abilities to make sure that you are ready for conversations like this, and making sure also all of the AI projects fails, what would you suggest to do? And a little bit of hint. So I attended a HubSpot conference in Dublin, EMEA Partners. A very interesting conference, top 80 partners. We had the conversations about changing world, basically. That was what it was about. And the idea was piloting. So if you have a fear, just pilot. Pick some small projects within the business, some small steps, really like tiny little steps. Really interesting idea. What is your take on that? How the leaders can be more prepared for that?
I think that's a great idea, Bart, because what the people that are succeeding with AI are doing is they're picking 1 or 2 or 3 business processes. Now, they're not trying to do 18. They're not trying to do it all over the organization. What you want to do, first of all, you mentioned agentic. There's 2 levels to me of AI. There's the personal productivity, which is the Copilot or the Claude or the ChatGPT, where it's like, hey, clean up my email or give me a meeting summary. That's a little different. You want to train your people on that. But then there's the agentic, where you take over business processes, and especially in sales. And I got a question or two for you, Bart. So in a second, is you want to be very cautious and strategic. So you do want to run a pilot. You want to ask your team, for example, what's the hardest part of their job? What takes the most time? What's the most boring, repetitive, frustrating part? And then, get a couple of them and then take one of them and work on AI solving it, but also work on AI solving it with your team. Because when it comes to business processes, you probably, as the leader, don't know. You have an idea, you have a good sense, but you don't know the details, and the details where a lot of the subtlety lies. So you want to really have your team working with you for this AI project. Let them know it's not going to take over their job, but it's going to make their life easier and better, and they can be working on the more value-added type of things. And then you're going to get some positive results out of it. A lot of these pilots, they're not asking the people on the front line, they're not asking the middle managers about it, and then they wonder why it never goes into production. But Bart, I'm going to ask you, what are you hearing from your clients? Are you hearing fear? Are you hearing excitement? Are you hearing both? What? Because I know you talk to a lot of end user clients now, a lot of sales leaders. I'm curious about what you're hearing. If it's okay if I interview you a little bit, Bart.
Well, this is all conversation, so thanks very much. Like what we are hearing in HubSpot ecosystem, so everyone is exposed to AI and they can see what others are doing. So what we can see is that, let's say that mid-sized company who is adopting, in this case, HubSpot, number one, young generations are taking and picking up very quickly. They want to actually test it. So probably this is on the back of my head, I don't have a proper numbers, but 10% of users, typically they are hyped. They put, so in HubSpot, we call it breeze agents. So they've got a specific problem. So they want to actually solve that problem very quickly. So example of the problem, chat and chat function about the pricing. Instead of actually chatting with them, let's put a knowledge base and let's chat, just answer these questions with specific guardrails, obviously. And this is they ready to deploy for pilot like this, no problem. There's the what we call the legacy people who are years within the business. They're a bit like unsure. Okay, what will happen with me? What will happen with us? Like, is it a use case? And obviously, there is a quite natural way of saying no to things that you don't know because you always done the same way as you did. Surveying, for example. Yeah, let's use this survey monkey and who knows where is the login actually. Do you know what? Let's just send the email and maybe they will reply if they like it. There is no NPS. Do you know, that kind of behavior. So what we're seeing is that what we're trying to do within our leadership is to just take all of this and having a bit of like, okay, this is the use case. This is how much time they saved. And what to do with this time, they can take care of the customers. And then this is where the magic comes. But it takes time, and it takes time with the culture of the business. So apparently founder, CEO must be open for the failures. So this is the time, interesting time when we test things, but we also look for a culture of the organization, how deep they want to go.
That's really interesting, Bart. And something you said that a lot of people might have even skipped over is, what are you going to do with the time you save? Because this is a great way I know this is human to human. So as humans, this is where we need to step in. We need to coach. We need to help redirect people's time. Yep. So if you're saving somebody 3 or 4 hours per week, which is pretty significant, that's like 10%. How can you make sure that they're spending that on more value added time? So maybe that's connections, maybe that's referral sources, whatever that is. So that's just something for sales leaders to keep in mind of, hey, if you are creating great productivity gains, make sure you're strategic with what you do with that time. Don't just say, oh, hey, you got 4 hours back, because they might just do busy work. Make sure you're redeploying them to something that's going to move the needle.
I might put a bit of theory, like we are talking about 4 days a week, work week, and for many businesses it's completely no, depending on the nature of the business. But AI might actually enable us in the future, like having a, Friday off or whatever your business, Monday, it doesn't matter really. But then you can use your time to basically be better at you. So if you're healthy, if you sleep well, if you have spent time with family and so on, then your productivity, you come to the work when you have this agentic world that, you know what you're doing and everything is well prepared. I think we might get that eventually. Not every business, but I would say so. But another comment for this, and I can see in my business where we have more in time, but we want to do more. And this is interesting. So in the past, and you probably know that more than ever, blogging, creating the blog was creating the blog. We had a problem, we create the blog, someone read the script, then someone check this out. Maybe yes, graphic designer will create some graphics. Then lots of one blog a week is the massive one. What we are doing now is we can accelerate blog out of our conversation 5 minutes after. So we can create hundreds of blogs for the sake of creating the interesting content for specific audiences. So then we can create more. So what you can do at that time, obviously you can create more experiences, better time with the customers, more activities that are actually leaning towards building human relationships. This is what I think that the world will shift to.
I totally hear you, Bart. And, one thing that I've been noticing with myself, and I think a lot of people are like this, is I'm a little less interested of like LinkedIn posts and Facebook posts, because I'm like, is that generated by AI? Because this is where we need to keep the humanness in. That if I think it's AI and somebody asks me, well, I tend to skip over it. And they're like, why? I'm like, because it's too easy to create bland content. And so like, I want something unique out of, if I read a post, I want to hear somebody's insights. What's unique about it? What's personal about it? And if it's AI, I'm like, well, they probably just crank something out with AI. So we went, and for leaders, this is especially true. Make sure you're not communicating with your staff using AI generated emails or newsletters, because nothing is going to turn them off more than getting an AI newsletter or an AI written email from their boss. Or because one of the biggest ways people are disconnecting now is because they feel they're not valued, and there's a lot of statistics. I don't want to bore you with all the statistics, but I'm going to boil it down for everybody. The issue with AI is people think that they are just another cog in the machine. And your job as a leader is to make sure they're valued, because when people feel valued, they work hard and they give their all. When they don't feel valued, then they sabotage, they're lazy, they procrastinate. So if you're sending a message out to your 10, 20, 100 person team that's generated by AI, they're going to feel like they're just having a computer talk to them, and they're going to disconnect. And especially if you're sending an email to somebody, especially about, maybe holding them accountable or whatever, make sure that's in your own voice. That doesn't mean you can't run it through AI to maybe soften it or to do it, but just be very careful, because that's something that a lot of people are getting caught in now.
And this is a very valid point. Most of the AI projects might fail because of that lack of being human, lack of a factor that people trust, which is like nuances, like people who like us talking, the accent, my accent, your accent, being close. I'm a fairly believer if actually event industry will be massive in AI world. I believe in we're talking about the private business clubs, networks, and so on. We might even go into the really local clubs in your village and whatever, that people actually get on together and build the relationships. I actually believe that people will still need to work on that. And I think that public speaking, it becomes more important in terms of how you present and how you talk, that you feel, okay, this is me, this is one. I don't know, what is your take on that?
You're absolutely right. And this goes to like the next level, where if you take a leader, this is very illustrative, so these aren't exact percentages, but if a leader has three roles, one is their functional role. So for example, if you're a CFO, that's a chief financial officer, your functional area is finance. If you're a CMO, chief marketing officer, is marketing. I know we have a lot of VP of sales or CROs here. So your functional area is like sales and revenue generation. So if a leader has three main areas, it is the functional area, what I just talked about. Number two is management, which is managing projects, which is doing employee evaluations. And the third is leadership. Well, now that AI is here, there's two areas it's going to do a lot better. It's going to really streamline. And that is management in your functional area. And that means, we're going to have to spend less time doing finance. We're going to have less time managing projects. So your job as a leader is to be more of a leader. And honestly, there's a lot of people in leadership that are in leadership because they're really good functionally.
Yes.
But maybe they're good managers, but they're not good leaders. They're not good at, and this is what your job is as a leader, is to really be great at having a vision, enrolling people in that vision, creating the culture of your team, holding people accountable, making complex decisions, having a strategy, because the AI is not going to be able to do that anytime soon, if ever. So if you're not good at those things, then your job is at risk.
And what I want to talk about now, but this is very interesting part. So how would that guy, I read your report in detail, and I can see a bit of different kind of dynamics when it comes to AI and leadership between America, Europe, and Middle East. Yeah. And it's because obviously now Europe and all of the compliance, America who wants to go very quick, dynamic, Middle East is different story, isn't it? So are we seeing three types of kind of soft powers because of that, I would even say, and what we can learn out of these places, these countries?
Yeah. So just so everybody's on the same page, and look, these are massive generalizations. In the U.S., there's a lot of pilot projects because Americans, we like to buy anything. You show us anything cool, we're buying it, right? Europe, there's really complex rules and regulations about privacy, about governance, about that. I'm not saying there should or shouldn't be. I just want to let people know that a lot of companies are running into real issues because it's like, what can we do or not do? EU, UK, et cetera. In the Middle East is really interesting because the governments there are so pro AI. The governments are an enabler, not a disabler like they are in pretty much all of the other Western countries. The issue is that, and I've done a lot of work in the Middle East, that the business processes aren't as mature, and it's such a new region that there's a lot of top-down management, which the problem with AI is they're very business process oriented. So you can't really go top down. There needs to be a lot of psychological safety. There needs to be a lot of communication, which honestly hasn't historically been Middle East strengths in the organization. So they're struggling because they have a lot of things going on, but they haven't really worked out the kinks. And part of that is because they need to make some switches.
So who should we lead in this world for AI? Any take on that?
Me, no. Honestly, it all comes down to the same couple things. These are business decisions. These aren't technology decisions. So you don't just drop a piece of software in there. What is the return on investment? What problem are we trying to solve? What's the business gain out of it? If you can't answer those, one thing is we do want to experiment. We do want to play around with it. But the second is we want to do it in a smart way. So, are we doing it just for the sake of doing it, or are we solving a major problem for our business? Are we creating a competitive advantage? Yeah. Here's something really interesting. We all want competitive advantages, but we all have access to AI. So actually AI is not the competitive advantage. It's your readiness. It's how you implement it, because AI can pretty much do anything, and we all have access to that. So how well you manage it, do you have a business case for it? Are you putting in, do you have somebody accountable for it? Can you scale it? That's the competitive advantage. It comes down to the people and the processes.
So, Michael, thank you very much. I have one more question before we wrap up. Obviously, human element was fantastic. We always talk about the connections and making sure we are relevant with all of this, what we're doing in projects, piloting and so on. But what would be the practical steps? So if someone is listening, middle-sized businesses, they just maybe on a tube, metro, they're flying, whatever, and they see this is all interesting, but Like, what's my next day? What's my next 60 to 90 days should look like? What should I do?
Absolutely, Bart. I'll give you two different things. One is I'll give you from like a mindset culture perspective. One is you want to start, first of all, you as a leader, you need to model AI. And what I mean model it, you don't have to be the expert at it, but what you want to do is you want to talk about it, you want to play with it, you want to share with your team that you are playing with it. You want to say, hey, guess what I screwed up with AI yesterday, so that they know that you're a human too. You don't have all the answers. And again, you don't have to be the best. You shouldn't be the best person in your team at it, but you want to make it part of the conversation and let them know that you're on board with this as well. So that's the first thing. Second thing is make sure that your managers are enabled and empowered around this, because they talk about the frozen middle with management. But I don't want to give you a long explanation of that, but they're finding the middle managers are where the pilot projects are getting stuck. But it's not because they don't want it to work. They're not being empowered. Nobody's listening to them. So just remember, your middle managers are what makes things go in the company and in AI projects. The third thing is be honest with your team. Your team is scared. And if there's no plans on letting anybody go because of AI, tell them that. If there is plans with a certain role or, these 10 people, tell them that too. And look, I know that's uncomfortable, but you might say, hey, chances are half of you are going to lose your job in the next 6 months because we're going to automate it. And I know that's hard. And you're like, I don't want to tell them that, but you're a leader. This is what you're going to do. And if you're not honest there, then everybody's going to be worried about their roles. So you need to open up some honest conversations around people. And that's really what you want to do, is you want to empower people and give them agency over things, as well as being honest. A specific thing that you can do with your team is schedule a 90-minute session and go into there and, again, ask them, what are the 2 or 3 or 4 most boring, toughest things about your job? Get an idea. Choose one of them and then have them work out an AI experiment that you can do over the next, say, 2 weeks. Now, we need you to be a facilitator of this meeting, not run the meeting, meaning get everybody else talking, get everybody else involved with the solution, have them own the solution, then have them report back in a little bit. That's really I call it a manager application sprint. And that's really a very specific thing that you can do as a leader.
Michael, I love the idea of this final task to do 90 minutes called What Boring Things, because if people want to focus on what they like in their jobs and just pass over boring stuff to agents, AI, or whatever agentic world, then we're going to be better. Michael, we passed, I think, the time. Lovely. Thank you very much for being with me and spending the time with me here. Lots of positive notes, lots of things to think of and apply. I'll definitely link up all of the resources that you shared, and definitely recommend everyone for any content or any events that you attend.
A pleasure, Bart. And just remember, everybody, we're at the start of a 25-year transformation, and there's so much that happened in 2 years. There's so much going to happen in the next 2 years, and as somebody who's been through a lot of technology changes, this takes time. It takes time. As good as the technology is, it takes time for businesses to change, the ecosystems to change. So just take a deep breath. You got this. Just keep making progress. You're not behind. You're not going to fall behind. And just remember, this is a marathon. Even though it feels like a sprint, we're going to get there. So just take it with everything with a grain of salt.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Bart. Take care.
Let's build a business based on H2H, not B2B, but human-to-human sales and marketing automation. A human approach is the only one that sells.